What's my SatAttack squad? It's your boy SatAttack. You guys see the title, man. It's been like a week or not even a week, like 4 days since I upload, or 3 days. But when curiosity ends in murder, we back on another coffee house crime video, man. You boys just came back from the gym. We're gonna check this one out. We're gonna check this one out by Mr. Ballin. So that's like 40 minutes right there, 40-50 minutes. And then we're gonna check out the destroying video if y'all like football content. But Road 2K may help brother out. Let's get it.
In a world so large, busy and complex, those that work in the public sector will meet people from all walks of life. Diversity is part of the package, and finding yourself in unpredictable situations may even be part of the job. But when a South Korean taxi driver picked up
comment down below which other video I'm react to, bro. I really don't even be
stranger just to find that her suitcase was leaking blood in his car, he had no idea how to react. And as the story behind that suitcase developed, it left the country of South Korea in shock. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, folks. My name is Adrian, and today I'm bringing you something slightly different to the usual by reporting on a case that has just happened in South Korea. A lot of Western news reports seem to be getting some of the details.
I love it when it's recent, like, hey, I can follow up right now.
Too, so it's time to set this one straight. By the way, welcome back to Coffee House Crime. I report on true crime and strange cases here weekly. So if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. And so, with that said, please grab yourself a coffee, pull up a seat, and get ready for the deep dive. This is the case of Jeong Yoo-Jeong.
At midnight down here, bro. My bad for pausing, but literally I love going to the gym at night, but the only downside is you be eating hella late and sleeping hella late type shit. But it's a weekend, so we good. But still.
Welcome to South Korea, folks. Although most of our cases tend to be in the country's capital, Seoul, found in the north, this story takes us to the southern coast, where we find the city of Busan. Officially known as Busan Metropolitan City, it is South Korea's second most populated city and is recognized as South Korea's southern economic center. With a population of almost 3.5 million residents and a GDP of $76 billion, this city has a rapid pulse as well as a mighty amount of money flowing. But for a brief moment, and since we've never been here before, let's focus on a few interesting facts instead. Home to the largest film industry in South Korea, Busan is known as the creative city. It's also the cultural capital for festivals.
I don't know when I've seen this, but I think I said in one of the other videos, bro. I doubt it was in Korea too, but I love the colorful houses, bro. That's actually pretty clean.
It's known as the creative city. It's also the cultural capital for festivals and creative gatherings, and is the gateway of entertainment to Asia. See it as the equivalent of Melbourne in Australia, California in America, or Glasgow in the United Kingdom. When it comes to the outdoors, you don't get much better than Busan. With incredible beaches, hot springs, and breathtaking seaside views, it's a clear winner for anyone looking to experience both the arts and the sun. Now, Busan's government website seems to be quite persistent in talking about its seaport too, and that's probably because it's the 6th largest megaport in the entire world. Almost 22 million 20-foot shipping containers run through these waters every single year.
Damn.
Which, by the way, is the 20-foot ship. It's the 6th largest megaport in the entire world. Almost 22 million 20-foot shipping containers run through these waters every single year. Which, by the way, is the volumetric equivalent of 730 billion liters of coffee. I don't think even I could get through that one. Anyway, Busan, like most of South Korea, is considered to be a very safe place to live. And this is probably why our case today received so much attention. On the topic of safety, there is one thing I wanted to talk about before we begin today's case, and that is your own safety. The year is 2023. We are all talking about AI, and the internet has become somewhat of a necessity.
That shit crazy.
We're all signed up to dozens of websites.
AI be sounding so realistic, bro. That shit is crazy. Like, when they be making songs with rappers' voices and shit, bro, like, you can't even tell if it's real or not, bro. Like, if you're listening to it, of course, if you, like, go deep into it and shit, like,
sites too. But have you ever wondered what those websites tend to do with your data? Every time you sign up to a website or subscribe to a newsletter,
like
it
a
often comes with the terms of
sponsor?
service for you to accept. And it's likely that by accepting the contract, you might be giving consent to your data to be sold and resold by hundreds of data brokers. Unfortunately, many of these data companies retain personal information like your name, gender, alias, shopping habits, and even your address, which by the way can lead to impersonation, fraud, and much worse. This is where our sponsor Incogni comes in. Incogni helps protect your
It's actually
privacy
a
by
good
removing your
sponsor.
personal data from the market.
I don't know who this is, who this company is, but hey, that's a real thing. Hey.
Do this by reaching out to data brokers on your behalf,
It's a
requesting your personal data to be removed, and dealing with their objections. Simply sign up to Incogni with my link, create an account, and the automated system will immediately get to work for you. You're also able to see the type of data broker, what information they
I might
carry,
actually
and
download
even their
this.
risk factor. Incogni has already removed 42 threats identified with my email address, and I've even had emails from these brokers to confirm that they've removed my data.
Wait, did this
Protect
shit free?
your online privacy today. Incogni is offering 60% off to the first 100 people
Makes sense, but how much is it? Cause that shit.
who use my
Could be
unique code
expensive,
CRIME.
yeah.
I'll leave that in the pinned comment and the description down below. Thank you people who use my unique code for
First
today.
100
Incogni is
60
offering to
Oh, yeah.
50% off to
I've
the
missed
first
that
100
shit.
people who use my
100
unique
people?
code CRIME. I'll
Oh,
leave that
yeah.
in the pinned
That
comment
shit's not
and the
even that
description down
many
below.
people.
Thank you to Incogni for sponsoring today's video. Thank you to you folks for supporting us content creators. And now let's get straight back into today's case. Focusing on our story today, it was around 3 a.m. on Monday the 27th, 2023, that police received a phone call from a... It was around 3 a.m. on Monday the 27th, 2023, that
May
police
the
received a
27th?
phone call from a very concerned taxi driver. He had just completed a journey after being hailed by a young woman carrying a suitcase. She approached the driver before asking him if he could drop her off near a wooded area by Nakdong Riverside, which can be found near Hapo Station within Busan. Now, this wasn't a problem. The taxi driver had completed this route many times before, and although the journey with the customer initially appeared to be normal, the situation would take a very sudden turn when she exited the vehicle. Getting out of his car and taking the suitcase out of his boot, he noticed that something had seeped out from under the suitcase, and with the wet and stickily thick feel, the red substance chillingly appeared to be blood. The passenger didn't seem to take any notice of the concerned look on his face, and under the cover of darkness, it is likely that she never realized his discovery. Without wanting to cause a fuss, the taxi driver pretended that nothing was wrong.
Smart. She a killer. Smart.
And after waving her goodbye, he watched her walk towards the wooded area. After she was out of his sight, he returned to the car boot, and after opening the door, he realized that the suitcase had left a small pool of blood on the carpet. Whatever was in that suitcase was nothing good. And so he did the right thing by dialing South Korea's emergency services 112 immediately. The news was concerning at best, and it certainly got the police's attention immediately. And after dispatching a few officers to that area, just a few minutes later they would find a few mutilated body parts.
Shit. Hey, real one. Hey.
The dense woodland, which was shrouded in darkness...
I mean, anybody would call the cops at that shit, but like, he didn't make a big deal of it. So when he saw, that's smart. That's not. He didn't ask, hey, what's in the bag? What's in that shit? Oh, it's nothing good, obviously, and she definitely a killer or some shit, but she might be an assassin.
was
So
the
you gotta
perfect
play
place
dumb.
to dump a body. But
Smart,
thanks to the
smart.
driver's quick thinking, the female passenger was identified and tracked back to her home just a couple of hours later.
smart.
And just 3 hours after leaving the taxi, the young woman, who would later be named as Jeong Yoo-Jeong, was arrested. Data analysts reviewing the case were quickly able to identify Yoo-Jeong through surveillance cameras in the area where she was picked up by the taxi driver. And with all of the evidence already
She
stacking up
just casually walking body parts across town type
around
shit.
her, they had enough information to execute a search warrant to her residence. It is worth mentioning that in South Korea, the names and details of victims and suspects of a crime are rarely disclosed in the media. This law, which has been in effect since 1991, ensures the safety and privacy of victims and offenders alike. However, under the country's Special Act on Punishment of Specific Violent Crimes, this privacy can sometimes be wavered, and especially when the crime is of a violent nature. Now, of course, this allows society to be aware of potentially dangerous people. But back to our case today, who exactly was Jeong Yoo-Jeong?
Who is she? talk
At
to me.
23 years old, Yoo-Jeong was born in 1999, and from the information that is currently available, it is understood that her parents were sadly too busy to look after her. As a result, she was raised by her grandfather in the northern district of Busan's Bukgu. She attended a private secondary school named Kyungye Girls High School, and while there, her reputation was relatively unremarkable, if not a little on the strange side. Those who remember her described her as a rather peculiar student. She was quiet, often sat at the back of the class, and was more or less a loner without any friends. And I know that sounds like an insult, but that's exactly how classmates have described her. Although she was never bullied at school, Yoo-Jeong never showed any interest in getting to know anyone. Most attempts to speak to her resulted in a blank stare back, and even after graduation, she barely kept in contact with any of her alumni. She then remained unemployed for 5 years while she prepared for a civil service exam, which in South Korea is a requirement to work in the civil service industry. Being able to speak English competently is also a requirement for this exam, and sadly is something that Yoo-Jeong was dismal at. And at the age of 23, her English competency was considered at the same level as a high school student. Mind you, this is something to remember later in the story. In recent years, Yoo-Jeong's and at the age of 23, her English competency was considered at the same level as a high school student. Mind you, this is something to remember later in the story. In recent years, Yoo-Jeong's isolation intensified. She would barely go outside, didn't create any social plans, and never tried to broaden her horizons. Now, she had also become a so-called true crime fanatic. Not that there is anything wrong with that, by the way. Anyway, she owned dozens of books and novels.
My bad, yeah. I'm fucking tired, but I love true crime,
Fanatic.
bro.
Not that there is anything wrong with that, by the way. Anyway, she owned dozens of books and novels about murder cases, watched many Korean true crime programs, and had even become obsessed with specific serial killers. Over the following days, data analysts learned several interesting facts about Yoo-Jeong. After going through her mobile phone, they realized that she had almost no contacts or messages, indicating that she was an extremely lonely young woman. What was most concerning, however, is that in the months leading up to her crimes, she had made several worrying searches online, including how to murder someone, murder without a body, and the perfect murder. Now, at first, Yoo-Jeong denied murdering her victim, and instead claimed that someone threatened to kill her if she didn't dispose of the body. But of course, police found multiple holes.
Come on. That's your story you're going with? You're a true crime fanatic. You're gonna go through some. You should be at the head of the game. I know it's hard to get away with murder, but like you said, someone told you, like you actually had to have a plan. Someone gotta call you. There's gotta be an alibi to the point, not alibi, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like it gotta make sense. Like someone told you to dispose of the body, and you just like
to this story. After being begged by her family to come clean, she would finally confess just 3 days later. She would also admit to police officers that she had an uncontrollable urge to kill someone.
If someone really told you to do that shit, you could literally go to the cops and say, "Oh, this dude wanted me to dispose of the body," type shit.
Because she wanted to know what it felt like. So it appears that the motive was purely out of morbid curiosity to kill, which also explains why Yoo-Jeong was happy to target a stranger. But who was her victim, and how did she kill them? Due to South Korean law, we don't actually know the face or even the name of the victim. So for the sake of this story, we're going to give her the pseudonym Ji-an.
Damn. Don't even know. Like, do they know the name and they're not disclosing it,
or even the name of, and how did she kill them? Due to South Korean law, we don't actually know the face or even the name of the victim.
Okay, so the victim's parents probably know.
So for the sake of this story, we're going to give her the pseudonym Ji-an.
This is the one said, okay, that makes sense.
As we know, Yoo-Jeong's plans to murder someone began around 3 months prior when she started her research online.
Damn,
she concluded that, since there would be no personal motive, it made a lot more sense to target someone randomly. However, with the social skills of a fish, she had to lean on the internet to do her bidding. After signing up to a popular tutoring app, she then pretended to be a parent who was looking for an English teacher who could tutor her child. On May the 24th, 2023, Ji-an was paired with Yoo-Jeong. The two eventually agreed to meet a couple of days later on the 26th, with Yoo-Jeong saying that she would send her child to the teacher's house. Ji-an accepted the offer. It was after her plans were confirmed that
she's literally trying to help you, bro. That is tough. Her last act, or whoever the victim was, will literally help them out. Or
Yoo-Jeong
help her
purchased
out.
a school uniform online, and on May the 26th, which was the day she scheduled to meet Jian, she pretended to be her fake child by disguising herself with the school uniform. Sliding a knife into one of her pockets, she then made her way to Jian's house, which was located in Gyeongju-gu. At a height of 4 foot 9 inches, or 1 meter 44, it is very likely that Jian...
Damn, she
at a height
4'9"?
of 4 foot 9 inches, or 1
God damn.
meter 44, it is very likely that Jian did not question her age at the door. And after entering the home and learning that Jian lived alone, Yoo-Jeong brandished the knife and then murdered her in cold blood. And after making sure that she was dead, she moved on to the next stage of her plan. Yoo-Jeong then travelled home just after midnight, picked up her suitcase, travelled to her local supermarket,
Bro,
called home
she just casually
sure that she was
walking like
dead.
she didn't just do what she just did. That's the craziest part with these killers, bro. They do shit and then just act normal after, bro. Like, that's crazy.
She moved on to the next stage of her plan.
Like, I'll be running red lights sometimes, like on accident type shit. I'll be panicking like shit, like, damn, I just ran a red light. Damn, I'm about to get. But you just killed someone. They just casually walking.
Yoo-Jeong then travelled home just after midnight, picked up her suitcase, travelled to her local supermarket, purchased knives, locks, zip ties, bleach, and plastic bags.
Oh, that's not suspicious. That's not suspicious at all. She's a fucking.
To her local supermarket, purchased knives, locks, zip ties, bleach, and
Zip ties, bleach, and knives. Like, what the fuck is going? No, bro. Bro, who the hell, bro? I would have caught red flags as a cashier or whoever the hell signed
plastic
off on that
bags,
shit.
and then returned to Jian's home. A surveillance camera captured this disturbing footage of her happily walking between the residences. What is awful is that she seemed excited and giddy in her steps, despite her very terrible actions.
That's
She then
what I'm
returned to Jian's
saying.
house, dismembered her body into multiple pieces, and placed some of them in
Like,
the suitcase.
she would have definitely
At a-
killed someone else if she didn't get caught. She low-key enjoyed it, so she would have probably definitely killed someone else. If it wasn't for that little cat or taxi driver or him, her, that little blood dripping out, like, she would have definitely killed someone else for sure, or at least attempted to.
At around 3 a.m. on the early
She
morning
seemed
of
like
the
she enjoyed that
27th,
shit.
and after making the mistake of not securely bagging Jian's limbs inside the suitcase, she then called for a taxi. And after
Stupid.
making her way to the park, she then
Stupid.
disposed of the body parts. Wanting to make it look like a
Stupid.
disappearance, Yoo-Jeong made an effort to hide Jian's identity. She did this by keeping her license, mobile phone, and purse.
Damn.
She also took the suitcase back with her to do a second round of dumping later that day. In Yoo-Jeong's own words, she had hoped to commit the perfect crime. But of course, as we all know by now, that would never actually happen.
Yeah, because you're a stupid ass fucking left blood in the taxi.
Instead, she was promptly arrested. Although it's not confirmed, it is theorized that Yoo-Jeong targeted Jian because she wanted to have what the tutor had, which was a high social status and a good academic background in English. Where
Yeah.
Yoo-Jeong repeatedly failed her English exams, Jian had actually graduated in English from a very prestigious university, and so an element of jealousy may have been part of the selection process. Yoo-Jeong tried to delay her arrest by claiming that she was bleeding internally, but after being sent to the hospital and being found to be in good health, she was promptly rearrested. Looking into her mental health, Yoo-Jeong had never been diagnosed with any form of mental illness, and to add to this, had a clean criminal record. So there was actually no way of predicting this murder. This, of course, was made further difficult with Yoo-Jeong's non-existent social life. Because she had no friends, she kept all of her dark thoughts to herself.
No one could
Following
vouch
her
for her.
arrest, Yoo-Jeong confessed that she had dreams of committing the perfect crime. However, and even despite the taxi driver, it is very unlikely that she would have got away with this. Jian's DNA was found in her apartment. Yoo-Jeong's DNA was found in Jian's apartment.
Stupid.
She had royally screwed up with a leaking suitcase, and she was even caught on several surveillance cameras.
And the shit that she bought was suspicious from the get-go.
Interesting side note here, and one that is learned from covering international true crime cases. But South Korea actually has a 4-factor psychopath diagnostic test. If you haven't guessed what that means, and by the way, I'm a little concerned if you haven't, but it's a test if you haven't guessed what that means, and by the way, I'm a little concerned if you haven't, but it's a test that allows psychologists and analysts to determine if someone is likely to be a psychopath or not.
She's definitely, wait, facet too affected with an antisocial lifestyle. Wait, how do you
A score
add
of
this shit up?
15 is considered to be average, where you're considered a psychopath when scoring above 25. 15
Damn.
is considered
I
analytical.
promise you, or she answered above 25. I promise you that. Wait, how do you answer this? You pick one of these five? Four? That don't even make sense. Interpersonal with
To determine if someone is likely to be a
lack
psychopath
of
or not.
remorse to kill.
A score of
emotionally
15 is
shallow.
considered to be average, where you're considered a psychopath when scoring above 25.
She definitely did.
Jeong Yoo-Jeong received 28 points, which is actually higher than the serial killer Kang Ho's son, who scored 27. Those who have been here for a while will know that I've covered Kang Ho's son's case about a year ago. After murdering his mother, he then went on to eat stray dogs and kill several other women before ultimately getting caught.
What the fuck? And this girl scored higher on that test than this dude who killed his mother. Like, bruh. That shit
So,
crazy.
Yoo-Jeong scoring higher than Ho's son is a pretty serious revelation. That is, of course, if this so-called psychopath test has any real credibility.
It probably
Interesting
does
side note,
somewhat.
but
Of course,
considering
it's not the
score and
only test,
considering
but I'm just
Yoo-Jeong's
saying.
demeanor, authorities
That shit
actually
crazy.
believed that if she wasn't caught, she would likely become a serial killer.
I'm
Anyway,
telling
after
you,
that,
she was definitely gonna do it at least as many times as she could get caught. So she was at least gonna do it at least one more time if she didn't get caught. Cause in that video, she wasn't scared. She wasn't like, "Oh shit, I just killed someone." She was like, "Oh yeah, I just killed someone." It's kind of like, you know what I'm saying? She was happy.
learning of Yoo-Jeong's social position, police administration specialists stated that it is highly likely that she is a reclusive loner with low self-esteem. And understandably, most Korean news media outlets have clung on to this description. In an interview conducted by MBC, Jeong Yoo-Jeong's grandfather expressed his sorrow and shame by saying, "I want to apologize 100 times to the bereaved family for raising my granddaughter wrong. That's how I feel." Earlier this month, Yoo-Jeong apologized profusely as she stood outside the police station. In a statement to media, she said, "I apologize to the victim and her family.
Sure.
I must have been out of my mind." As you can guess, this case gained a lot of attention in South Korean media. Many
on, you just
people were
killed someone,
shocked due
what
to
the
its
fuck?
wildly impersonal nature. Jeong Yoo-Jeong had no reason to murder, except to only satisfy her own sick curiosity. So, what happens now? With this case happening so recently, Yoo-Jeong's trial is yet to be given a date. She is still being psychologically examined before officers can even determine
Oh, they
what
grabbing her
charges she
hair.
will
Is that her?
face. She is still being
I wasn't even
psychologically
paying attention to the video. I just thought it was over. Like,
so
I just
recently,
was listening.
Yoo-Jeong's trial is
Oh,
yet
they
to be
grabbing
given a
her hair.
date. She is still
Ooh.
being psychologically examined before
Look
officers
at
can
that
even determine
hair.
what charges she will face. Though it is very likely to be murder in the first degree. South Korea
She better,
does still
she
technically allow
better.
the death penalty, though its last
Wait, they
execution's
don't?
degree. South Korea does still technically allow the death penalty, though
Technically.
its last execution hasn't actually taken place since 1997. And
Shit.
although there are more than 60 people on death row, they will likely never face capital punishment.
Damn.
On the flip side, Yoo-Jeong may see a sentence as small as 5 years behind bars, though it is likely to be much higher should she be found guilty.
Bro, from this whole video, what else do you need? She had blood dripping out of her bag. She literally said she did it. I think she literally said that, I believe. She literally had DNA in
I don't
both
really know what
spots.
to think about this case. I mean, I understand that, being into true crime, she probably learned a few tricks. I think the media wildly exaggerated her interest. Now, true crime is a rapidly growing genre in the modern day world.
Yeah, I love
and
it.
to be honest, if it wasn't for that growth, I probably wouldn't be in front of this camera for you folks. I have already said this in another video, but when viewed with compassion, it can be educational, help us feel
Yep.
empathy for the victims,
Yep.
and even help us be more aware of our safety. It's
Yup, that's what I'm saying, bro. Dude, people be blaming this shit on, oh, he like true crime. He's like, nah, bro. Like, not everyone's a killer that watch true crime, bro. Like, that shit is.
obvious to see that Yoo-Jeong was
literally just
recluse
hit on
and
every single
unfortunately
point.
very lonely. And I think the void that was made through that loneliness created a very unhealthy obsession. That obsession, of course, to be the desire to kill someone. General disclaimer that watching true crime does not make you strange or weird, by the way. It is human nature to be curious, and this sort of genre
burp.
allows us to explore the deep depths of the human mind. Another side note, but that taxi driver quit his job last week, so I guess Yoo-Jeong was enough to prompt a career change. Anyway folks, I think I'm gonna wrap this one up today, but I'd love to know what you think about this case. Please share your thoughts in the comment section down below. I didn't really see the point in waiting for trial for this one, as it's kind of obvious that Yoo-Jeong is guilty. But of course, I'll keep you updated when a sentencing happens.
Alright, but let's do it for everything. I probably hit on everything while I was talking, but yeah, get her ass out of here. Worst players of the tournament. Okay, but road 2K, bro, stupid gun, damn it. But we out.